Okay, let's dive right into this epic journey. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to trace the incredibly complex, unfolding tapestry of humanity. We are covering millions of years today, stretching literally all the way from our earliest human ancestors, just trying to survive in the wild, right up to the monumental dawn of the Middle Ages. It is a massive, absolutely fascinating story about how we became who we are today, and I am so thrilled to guide you through it. We have a whole lot of ground to cover. We'll kick things off with the dawn of prehistory and the agricultural revolution, watch the first cradles of civilization rise, journey through the empires of the East, explore Greece and Rome, and then finally step right up to the edge of the Middle Ages. So, to really understand our past, we first have to make a core distinction between history and prehistory. History, by definition, literally begins with the written word. Everything before writing was invented, that's prehistory. In fact, a 5th century Greek named Herodotus is widely referred to as the father of history, simply because he was one of the very first people to systematically write down and document the events of the past. But wait, if there are zero written records for prehistory, how do we know anything about it at all? Well, it's a bit like a giant puzzle. Archaeologists have to rely on physical sources. By physically digging up the past, they uncover the monuments, the tools, the pottery, and the artifacts left behind. And honestly, these silent objects speak volumes to us about how our earliest ancestors actually lived day to day. Section 1. The Dawn of Prehistory. This is the Paleolithic era, a period that began a staggering 5 million years ago. For millions of years during the Paleolithic, humanity relied on early nomadic survival. Moving constantly to hunt, gather, and shelter in temporary huts or natural caves. But eventually, there was this monumental shift to a Neolithic sedentary lifestyle. It was a total game changer, where humanity finally learned to cultivate the land, raise cattle, and build permanent villages. The crucial takeaway here is that even way back in the Old Stone Age, humans were rapidly innovating. Modern humans, people just like us, first appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago. They eventually figured out how to create fire, which obviously allowed them to keep warm and cook their food. They crafted stone knives, began burying their dead with complex spiritual rituals, and around 35,000 years ago, they even used soil, blood, and plants to paint breathtaking hunting scenes on cave walls. They were laying the very foundations of human culture. Section 2. The Agricultural Revolution. This brings us to the Neolithic period, about 10,000 years ago, where humanity took its absolute greatest leap forward. This massive leap was completely fueled by the evolution of tools. Think of it like a prehistoric tech upgrade. Early Paleolithic tools were made just by striking stones together. But during the Neolithic, or the New Stone Age, humans started using friction polishing to create much sharper, highly durable tools. Eventually, this evolved right into the Age of Metals, where humans mastered metallurgy. They were literally melting copper, bronze, and eventually super tough iron in ovens to cast specialized tools and weapons. All these polished tools and new metal gadgets allowed for incredibly efficient farming, which, as you might guess, caused human populations to absolutely skyrocket. And here's why this matters. Once people had a reliable surplus of food, they didn't all have to be farmers anymore. They could specialize in distinct trades. Add in game-changing inventions like the wheel, the plow, the loom, and the sail. And suddenly, these little growing villages blossomed into actual cities, all interconnected by bustling systems of barter and commerce. Section 3. First Cradles of Civilization. As these cities grew more complex, writing was inevitably invented to keep track of trade. Prehistory officially ended, and we entered the age of documented empires. Now, these monumental leaps weren't just happening in one isolated place. They were sparking simultaneously all across the globe. Just think about this timeline. Around 3000 BC, the Yamnai culture domesticated horses on the Eurasian steppes. A couple hundred years later, early Chinese dynasties like the Longshan were building sophisticated walled cities along the Yellow River, while the Indus Valley civilization rose. And over in the Americas, around 600 BC, the Zapotec civilization birthed the very first regional writing systems. Over in the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia became a true cradle of civilization, and it happened simply because its incredibly resourceful people learned how to harness the chaotic, unpredictable flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. By inventing dikes and irrigation canals, they totally controlled the waters. They cultivated massive surpluses of food and organized into powerful, independent city-states like Sumer and Babylon, utilizing a brand new writing system called cuneiform. 7,000. That is the length, in kilometers, of the Nile, the second largest river in the world. Now, unlike those chaotic rivers of Mesopotamia, the Nile was predictable. It was this beautiful, life-giving highway that reliably fueled the ancient Egyptian civilization for an incredible 3 millennia. The Egyptians, as we know, built monumental architecture, like the massive pyramid tombs for their pharaohs. But it wasn't just about big buildings. Their deep belief in Ma'at, which was their principle of order and harmony, drove them to incredible scientific advancements. They firmly believed the soul needed an intact body to enter the afterlife, which pushed them to master mummification. And through that process, they developed an incredibly advanced understanding of human anatomy, medicine, and complex surgery, all meticulously recorded in hieroglyphics. Section 4. Empires of the East. Let's shift our focus eastward now, to the vast and diverse Indian subcontinent. The origins of this region's names are actually super fascinating. It originally derived the name India from the Indus River, which the ancient Greeks called the Hindos. Meanwhile, according to ancient texts called the Puranas, it was referred to as Bharatvarsh, named after the legendary king Bharata. The scope of history here is just staggering, moving from the early Indus Valley civilization straight through the Vedic period, which brought in a new language in the caste system. India became a powerful spiritual incubator for the entire world. It birthed major global religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Later on, under expansive, powerful empires like the Mauryan and the Gupta, India experienced a true golden age of literature, religious expansion, and political science. Section 5. Greece and Rome. Next, we explore the Mediterranean powerhouses that shaped so much of modern Western thought. The Greeks, who emerged around 1200 BC, were fascinating because they weren't one united country. They lived in fiercely independent city-states, or polis, like Athens and Sparta. But their shared, intense curiosity about the natural world birthed philosophies from minds like Plato and Aristotle. They gave us rich polytheistic myths of Zeus and Athena and political systems like the very first democracy for free citizens. Oh, and they also gave us the Olympic Games. We still draw heavily on all of this today. Moving further west, founded around 753 BC, Rome took a rather different path. It originally evolved from a republic, where politicians like consuls and a senate debated and made decisions through political agreement, into a vast, singular empire ruled by one all-powerful emperor. And this major shift happened right after a period of intense political crisis. The sheer scale of Rome's organizational power is honestly mind-blowing. Their highly trained military legions allowed them to conquer and hold territories stretching from Britannia all the way to Syria. But they maintained that control through unmatched engineering. We're talking massive aqueducts moving water for miles, incredibly sophisticated paved road networks, and grand amphitheaters for massive public entertainment. Not to mention, they laid down an advanced civil law system that still forms the basis of many legal codes today. Section 6. Into the Middle Ages. Because as history shows us time and time again, even the absolute mightiest empires eventually fracture and fall. The sequence of events that brought classical antiquity to a close was rapid, and it was brutal. Facing immense pressure from invading Germanic tribes in the late 4th century AD, the massive Roman Empire tried to survive by splitting into an eastern and western half to make it easier to govern. But the pressure was just too much. By 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire completely dissolved, officially marking the end of the ancient world. This dramatic fall leaves us with a really provocative thought. The collapse of Rome didn't mean the end of humanity. It simply turned a massive page in our history book. It paved the way for 10 centuries of the Middle Ages, a totally new era of knights, castles, and a completely restructured global society. So, what exactly did that new world look like? Well, that is something we will just have to explore next time. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and keep learning.